The article I have on my screen right now is fake news. It reads, Cruz promotes conspiracy that Ukraine, quote, blatantly interfered in U.S. election. Senator Ted Cruz said on NBC's Meet the Press Sunday that Ukraine blatantly interfered in the 2016 election, repeating a conspiracy theory that experts warn has been promoted by Russian intelligence services. Nah, we're not going to let the press gaslight us. I'm sorry. So long as I have air in my lungs and blood in my veins, I will resist all of their insane attempts to lie. Ted Cruz is right, and he was exactly right. Unfortunately, as I criticized at the end of my main segment video, he wasn't prepared for this. And I understand he did a good job. He thought he was going to come in here and say, here's the truth, but he should have brought harder documents. And you know what? Maybe it's impossible. Maybe that's a sad reality. Check it out. Here's the quote from Ted Cruz. He said, because Russia interfered, the media pretends nobody else did. Ukraine blatantly interfered in our election. The sitting ambassador from Ukraine wrote an op-ed blasting Donald Trump during the election season. It's hysterical. 2 years ago, there was article after article after article in the mainstream media about Ukrainian interference in the elections. But now, the Democrats have no evidence of a crime, no evidence of violating the law. And so suddenly, Ukraine interference is treated as the media clutches their pearls. Oh my goodness, you can't say that. Last week, Chuck, you called Senator John Kennedy basically a stage of Putin. I'm going to debunk the fake news with citing one article. They claim that the experts are saying Russian intelligence services are trying to push this to discredit Ukraine. The New York Times reported that a Ukrainian court ruled the actions taken by some Ukrainian officials was election interference, was meddling in the U.S. election. So are you trying to argue to me, Axios, that a Ukrainian court is pushing Russian propaganda? Please explain this. See, this is how they push the lies. They don't cite any facts. They just call it a conspiracy. Okay, fine. Let's say the Ukrainian court never said that. Is the New York Times pushing a Russian conspiracy? Or do I trust the New York Times? It's hard to say, I got to be honest. But I'll tell you what, external reporting, statements from within Ukraine in their media backs up the previous reporting from The Hill, Politico, the New York Times, the Washington Post, the Examiner, etc. Cruz is right. Article after article talked about Ukrainian interference, and now they're trying to sweep it under the rug because it's discrediting the Russian narrative because they played the same game. But let me clarify, and Ted Cruz did say this. Russia did a top-down, like high gear, like top-notch interference campaign that we know. Ukraine had a few loose scragglers trying to disrupt the elections, and their courts ruled it as such. Simply by saying that, they're now trying to claim those Ukrainian officials who did this, not real. You're lying. Oh, it was just criticism. It was just people speaking. Sorry. We are not going to let the media gaslight. So I tell you this. Share this article if you think this is important, because I'm going to show you proof from a reporter breaking down through the timeline exactly what happened. Let's read Axios. They say, the Ukrainian election conspiracy is one of the defenses that Trump allies have used to justify his decision to withhold military aid to the country. White House Acting Chief of Staff Mick Mulvaney said at a press conference in October that the aid was frozen until Ukraine investigated the interference allegations before later being forced to walk it back. Full stop. Even if Trump is wrong, even if Cruz is wrong, are you saying that Trump isn't allowed to ask for an investigation when he truly believes there was corruption? If this is a conspiracy theory, that doesn't change anything. You're saying that Trump doesn't believe it? All that matters is Trump thinks it's true and wants it investigated. And if it turns out it's not true, congratulations, that's what investigations are for, no? In 2014, they say, Russia invaded, occupied, and annexed the territory of Crimea from Ukraine. In response, the U.S. and much of the international community denounced Russia and refused to recognize its annexation of the peninsula. During the 2016 election, Ukraine's ambassador to the U.S., Valerie Chaley, wrote an op-ed for The Hill in which he criticized candidate Trump for saying he would consider recognizing Crimea as Russian territory. That op-ed is one of several actions that Republicans say amount to election interference. This is gaslighting to a great deal. Let me tell you what they're really talking about. Alexandra Chalupa, working on behalf of the DNC, digging up dirt on American officials, notably Paul Manafort, Trump's, I believe, worked for the Trump campaign, and getting this information from the Ukrainian embassy. This is a fact. It's not disputed. What Axios is doing is trying to it's trying to strawman the argument. They say, however, the scattershot criticisms from Ukrainian officials in the aftermath of Trump's Crimea comments differ greatly from the top-down, large-scale interference operation. Yeah. Ted Cruz said that. That's literally what Ted Cruz said. The Republican-led Senate Intelligence Committee released an extensive report that found that Russia hacked the DNC and funded a social media misinformation to sow discord in American politics. That doesn't change the fact that Ukraine did and that Axios and the media right now is lying. But I bring you now to Mr. Lee Stranahan. He is a co-host of Fault Lines Radio. He is a reporter exposing Russiagate, Ukrainegate hoax. He says, watch Revealing Ukraine on Amazon Prime, co-host Fault Lines Radio. He tweeted, however, it's worth noting that Alexander Chalupa's sister, it's a very long thread. The first tweet, the skeptical person's guide to 2016 Ukrainian election interference. The media is telling you that the Ukrainian election interference is a debunked conspiracy theory. In this thread, I'm going to prove to you that's an admitted fact. I'm the reporter who covered it for years. It's not just that it's true. It's that people involved admitted to doing it. And now that it's bad for Democrats, all of a sudden the media is saying, no. Let's read. He says a DNC operative named Alexander Chalupa, who was targeting Paul Manafort since 2015, worked with top Ukrainian officials on behalf of Hillary, which led to Manafort being forced out of the Trump campaign in August 2016. Proof? Read on. To start, here's the article from Politico about DNC operative Chalupa working with Ukrainian embassy to dig up dirt on Manafort and Trump. Politico never followed up on the article, but they didn't retract or correct. Now, I've said repeatedly, Politico, you need to retract this if you don't like it. The fact remains. The story is real. It really happened. And Politico did their due diligence and proved it. But now, almost 3 years later, it's bad for Democrats. So naturally, this media machine is emerging to try and discredit their own reporting. He says one of the key pieces of evidence in that article is an email that Chalupa sent the DNC detailing other work she was doing to dig up dirt on Ukrainians. More on this later. Because I said this is admitted, here's another important reference point. The June 2019, with Alexander Chalupa by her sister, Andrea, on her podcast, Gaslit Nation. She admits she sent that email, among other things I'll show you later. More key admissions come from Kiev Post article interview with Chalupa. He says I'll highlight elements from this later in the thread. It's been interesting to watch how the media has covered for Alexander and the DNC to cover up the story of 2016 Ukrainian election interference for years. For example, this July 2017 article is part of the CNN cover-up. Let's go over some of the claims in that article and show you how they're deliberately deceptive or outright lies. I've numbered the claims from CNN. He says, first, Chalupa admits to working for the DNC in 2016. Quote, during the 2016 U.S. election, I was a part-time consultant for the DNC running an ethnic engagement program. She was working for the DNC, admittedly. Then in claim 2, she denies being an opposition researcher for the DNC. Her official position may not have been opposition researcher, but the WikiLeaks email clearly shows she was working on Oppo research. He says it's worth noting that Chalupa's sister Andrea said that, quote, that Alexandra led Trump-Russia research. And here's a screenshot. Andrea Chalupa, my sister led Trump-Russia research at DNC. U.S. hackers protecting voting systems believe Russia hacked vote tallies. You see, back in 2016, it was beneficial for Democrats to say they were doing the research and Russia. Now that Russia's been disproven, they're terrified now that the narrative they created about Ukraine is backfiring on them because they have nothing to use against Trump anymore. He says claim 3 by Chalupa is that the DNC never asked me to go to the Ukrainian embassy to collect information. She has admitted to going to the embassy, working with officials and reporting to people at the DNC put into place by the Hillary Clinton campaign. And he presents evidence from a CNN article. The DNC admitted to directing Chalupa. Chalupa lied. The DNC was being updated by Chalupa while she was working for the DNC. She was briefing the top people at the DNC in both communications and researched the DNC CEO's request. The emails prove this. That's from the same CNN article I linked a few tweets back. The DNC admitted that communications director Louis Miranda directed Chalupa to ask the embassy whether Ukraine's leader would take a question. So that's claim A admitted to by the DNC and CNN in 2017. In claim B, I say Chalupa lied to CNN. In that same article, she admits to meeting with embassy officials, but says it was only to discuss Ukrainian heritage events. This is clearly contradicted, not just by the DNC request that she delivered that I just mentioned, but by her email. He says this email was sent out to Louis Miranda, the communications director at the DNC. This is important because Miranda got that job via the secret joint fundraising agreement where Hillary Clinton took over the DNC to keep Sanders from getting the nomination. And this was reported by NPR. I'm not going to go into great detail, right? Let me just tell you. Stranahan on Twitter, it's Stranahan, has a much longer thread. There's only several more tweets where he backs all of this up with sources from left-wing outlets, from CNN, from The Atlantic. So I will just leave you with this. It has been documented. It has been proven. But boy, are they trying to gaslight us. Don't believe it. Check the sources for yourself and don't let them cover it up. For years, they wrote about this. They claimed this. And now that it's bad for them, they're trying to claim it's fake news. I refuse. Stick around. I got one more segment coming up in a few minutes, and I will see you all shortly.